Hello, how are you all? I'm Hector Perez from Dev School. This time, I want to show you how to carry out the creation of a project in which we can implement a navigation system between view models without the use of any frameworks. That is, without using fresh MVVM or any other kind of frameworks, just implementing what we create, the classes we create, and I'll teach you this from the basics, so you know exactly how each part of this solution we are going to implement works. This video is based on the fresh MVVM repository. We'll manually implement everything, meaning we're going to write all the code to give you an idea of how this part of the navigation in Xamarin.Forms works. It's a foundation, or it's base code that works, or it's the way many frameworks actually operate. Many frameworks use the same concept or the same pattern for these types of projects. So, we'll create the project from scratch to show how this navigation part is accomplished. Okay, with that said, we'll go ahead and create a new project. Let's select a mobile app project type from Xamarin.Forms. Click Next and let's, for example, name the project NavDemo or better, Navigation Demo. Navigation Demo. This project will be available on GitHub. I will leave the GitHub repository in the video description. We'll place this project on this path here and we'll create this new project. We choose that we want a blank project and indicate that we want this implementation for Android and iOS. Let's create the project. It's worth noting that the creation of this project is based on several repositories found on GitHub. Not all the code is mine, but what I did was simplify this part. That is, extract the essential parts of the projects and show you how to implement just this part of navigation. Additionally, I have greatly simplified the code to only display the essentials for this part of navigation. The first thing I'm going to do is create a couple of pages. I'm going to create a new folder named Views. So I'm proceeding to create the Views folder. I'm also going to create a folder named View Models. I'm going to create a third folder. Well, we're not really going to use this Models folder because we're only going to display the transition between different pages. The next thing we're going to do is create a couple of pages. These pages are actually going to be very simple. I'm just going to indicate that I want a content page called Page 1 View. I'm creating a second page named Page 2 View. This is so that we have an easy way to identify that we want to go from page 1 to page 2. We're going to format page 1 view a bit. We're going to specify that we only want to create a button element. We're going to change this text to go to page 2. What we would usually do without this navigation part with MVM would be to create an event handler for the click event. Here, from the view model, or rather from the code behind, we would already have this event handler. Since we're using a content page, we have access to the class named Navigation, and we have this method called pushAsync, where we can create a new instance of page 2 view. Okay, for this to function properly, we need to go to app.xml tassis and specify that we want a new navigation page, passing an instance of page 1 view. We need to import the necessary namespace, and with that, we can initiate navigation from page 1 view. So, once we press the button, we will proceed to page 2 view. Let's quickly look at the code. Here, instead of Welcome to Xamarin.Forms, we'll input Welcome to page 2. Okay, let's see if this works correctly. Let's wait a few seconds for the app to compile. Keep in mind that as this is the first compilation, it might take a bit of time, so let's be patient. Remember, this is an uncut video, so let's wait for the app to compile. Meanwhile, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, click like on this video, and also click the bell icon to get notifications whenever we upload new content. Then we have our page here. We click on Go to page 2 and we successfully reach our page 2. Okay. This is quite straightforward. The complexity comes in when we already have a folder named View Models, and we have a specific view model, for example, Page 1 view model, a separate view model for each page. Here we would have a public class Page 1 view model, and we would have a new class named Page 2 view model. We would have a public class Page 2 view model, and the part concerning view models would be ready. The idea then is that from our view, Page 1 view, we don't use this event handler because it links, or we're linking, the business logic part to our main page. What we aim to achieve here is to remove this, and from the code behind, specify binding context equal to a new instance of Page 1 view model. This is to link the view model with the page or the view. So Page 1 view model is now connected to Page 1. The idea is that when we are in Page 1 view, we should not use the event handler or the event itself, but use the command that's bound to that click event to bind to, for instance, a command called button command. This is primarily what we do when we work with view models. Then, from our view model, the plan is to have here a property type and command. We need to import the missing namespace. We paste the command name. Here we have, for instance, a constructor where we indicate that button command is equal to a new instance of a command. We import the namespace, and here we create a lambda expression to manage this command. Here what we would have to do is to go to Page 2. Or in English, go to Page 2. Okay, this part or the confusion many newcomers to the world of Xamarin have. How can I move between view models without having to pass page references to accomplish the navigation? This is what we'll address in this video. It's going to be a very interesting video. We're almost 10 minutes in, but it's really worth understanding this because it will clear up many doubts. What will we proceed to do? Well, let me quickly check my notes. The first thing we have to do is create a folder called Services. Let's create a folder called Services. What we are going to do is define an interface. We're only defining a single method within this interface at the moment, but the idea is to make this interface a bit more complex later on. For this video's purposes, I'll keep the interface as simple as possible. If you'd like a video where I make a more comprehensive implementation or a follow-up of this video, feel free to leave a comment to consider the possibility. So, as part of this services folder, I'm going to create a new interface. I select an interface which I will name Navigation Service. This will be a public interface where we're going to define a method returning a task type. We will import the necessary namespace and call it Navigate2Async. To clarify, the name indicates it will allow us to perform a navigation operation. Not only that, but we will specify that we need to indicate a view model to which we want to navigate. Via a generic, we are going to stipulate that we need to pass an element, which we will call tViewModel. The name can be anything you want, but for the sake of understanding, we'll refer to it as tViewModel. Our method, now part of this interface, is ready. So remember, this method is an indication that we can navigate from one view model to another. Now that we've got this set up, let's create the actual implementation of this interface, called Navigation. We're making this class public, and of course, we must implement the interface we just created called eNavigationService. Let's implement the interface. This is a class. I apologize, it's a public method called Navigate2Async that accepts a generic, and we need to implement how to navigate from one view model to another view model. But before we can carry out this implementation, there are a series of steps we need to follow which will serve as a foundation to enable us to navigate. If you have ever used a framework, you might have noticed that the developers ask you to maintain a certain structure or to name your files in a certain way. This is done because the idea is for you to provide the name of the view model you're currently working on, and it can resolve or create an instance of your view or page based on the name you provide. If you've noticed, we've named the files in a specific way for a specific purpose. We've named the view model the same as the view. For example, page 1 view is named the same as page 1 view, and it only has this additional part, model. So, the idea is that we can indicate that we want to go, for example, from page 1 view model to page 2 view model, and then we remove model and get the corresponding page name for this view model. That is page 2 view. So, how can we do this? Well, let's declare a method. I'm going to make this window smaller. What I'm going to do now is create a method. Hopefully, this code isn't too complicated. In fact, it's not that complicated. You just need to understand what each line of code does, and I'm going to explain what each line does. We indicate that we need a type. This method is going to be called getPageType. For viewModel, we're going to indicate that we wish to pass a viewModel type. What we want to do is determine the type of page that is defined that is associated with the specific view model. In other words, if we pass through a generic page 2 view model, the idea is that we should be able to retrieve an instance of page 2 view. So, we're going to return a type, and to accomplish this task, we'll declare a variable called viewName that will be equal to viewModelType, which is the type we are passing as a parameter. This viewModelType will be the view model that we pass as part of the generic we see here. So, once we invoke viewModelType, we'll specify that we need the full name and we need to replace the word model with a string.empty. What are we going to do here? For instance, if we have a view model called page2viewModel, we're going to remove the word model. Then we will know that the corresponding page or view for this view model is called page2view. That is the intention with this first line. The next line will allow us to obtain the assembly name, that is, where these files we have here are located, the assembly name. For this, we will use a variable called viewModelAssemblyName equals, and we'll indicate again viewModelType dot, we have a method called getType, getTypeInfo dot assembly.fullName. Here we certainly have to, well here it's a get with a capital G, and we need to import the namespace system.reflection because we are already working with assemblies. With this, we will be able to get the full assembly name. Why is this useful to us? Well, it enables us to get the specific type of our page. The next thing we need to do is to obtain the assembly's name. So, var viewAssemblyName is equal to string.format. We will specify culture_info. We need to import the namespace system.globalization.invariantCulture. We are going to construct a string from a parameter, followed by a second parameter. Our first parameter will be the view's name. The second parameter will be the viewModelAssemblyName. What are we doing with this line? With this line, we are going to construct the full name of the location of this view we possess. Remember, we are obtaining the full name of the view model from the view model, but we need the complete path of the assembly or, well, the specific file of page 1 view. So with this viewAssemblyName, we are going to construct the name of the assembly plus the specific type of the view, which is viewName. Okay, once we have this ready, we'll proceed to declare a new variable called viewType, which is equal to type. And we have a method called getType, where we will specify that we need the type of viewAssemblyName. With this, we've now obtained the specific type from a name. This is a string as such, but we want a type element. That's why we make this type.getType from the assembly string or from the specific root of the file from the view we want to obtain. Finally, we return viewType. Okay, with this, we obtain the page type from a view model. Okay, everything is going fine so far. Let's test this to see how it works in action. We're going to go to app.xaml.ccs and we're going to set var type equals to a new navigation service. We import the necessary namespace, put the parentheses, point, and we have the getPageTypeForViewModel method. We need to pass a type of. Remember, this method takes a type. So we establish a type of for page1 viewModel. We want to obtain the specific type of our viewModel, which is called page1 viewModel. Let's see this in action. We will go to Navigation Service, set a breakpoint, start the application, and go step by step through the method we've created. Okay. We go through the first line. We see that view name is actually navigation.demo.views.page1view. Here we're removing the word model from the specific view model name. So if you look closely, the whole structure of view name corresponds to navigation.demo.views.page1view. This matches the navigation structure, or rather the specific project structure where a page1 view is located. With this, we then obtain the name of our view. The next step is to get the assembly name. Notice that this returns navigation demo version 1.0.0.0 avs, that is, the assembly structure. With the following line, what we do is combine this page's name that we have obtained, which is navigation demo.views.page1view, with the assembly's structure. With this, effectively, we can obtain a type. So we have a type class with our page's information, in this case page1 view, because it's the page we indicated we wanted to fetch the information from. So with this, we see this method's implementation works correctly. Done. We have completed this method for fetching the type. What is the next step? Well, first, we will designate this method as private. And secondly, we will clarify that we need to create a method that allows us to instantiate the actual page. That is, we need a page data type. So we will specify that we will create a private method that returns a page, which will import the Xamarin.Forms namespace and call the method createPage. As this method will invoke the getPageTypeForViewModel method, we need to specify that we need a type as well. We will specify that the name be viewModelType as the second parameter and set up this method to receive a parameter in case we need to pass any data to a second view model. In this demonstration we won't do this, but let's get this method ready in case we want to implement it later. Next, we need to get the type from the view model. We have the method ready for this action. So we invoke it, getPageTypeForViewModel of the viewModelType of the viewModelType. Okay, and if pageType equals null, meaning if we write an incorrect view model or have a view model that doesn't correspond to the implementation we're making, we can throw a new exception with a message, for example, cannot locate pageType for view. Here we need to place the dollar symbol. ViewModelType. Okay. Otherwise, if we have been able to create a type, we will indicate that we want an element of type page, which is called page, and we are going to use a class called activator. This class informs us of the description that contains methods to create object types locally or remotely, or to gain access to references of existing remote objects. This class, therefore, will serve us in creating an instance. We have a method called createInstance specifically that takes an element of type, which is exactly what we have from a previous line. Therefore, we can pass page type and we can indicate that this will be equal to a page or the result will be a page data type. With this, we will return the element page and we are ready to create page objects from a view model. Okay. We are now ready to create a page from a view model. The next step is to be able to navigate internally from one view model to another view model. To carry out this task, we will proceed to create a new method, which will also be private, that will return a task known as internal. Navigate to async. We will pass as a parameter a type element called viewModelType. Remember that this is the view model that we are passing between methods. We will indicate that we can pass a parameter, However, as I mentioned earlier, we will not be implementing the parameter part in this video. Next, we will first obtain a reference of the page from the view model. So, we have the method called createPage derived from the view model, and we will specify that we want to pass this parameter. Next, we will indicate or acquire a reference named navigation page, equivalent to application.current.main page, which you may have used previously as the navigation page. We will basically check if navigation page is not equal to null, then we will perform a await on navigation page push async, passing the view model's page reference. Otherwise, we will proceed to perform an await, application.current.main page to be equal to a new instance of navigation page, passing the view model's page reference. What are we hoping to achieve with this? Well, to maintain a reference to a navigation page to carry out the async push action to a new page, and also keep a navigation page reference so that, in case it does not exist, we can create it. If it already exists, we can keep pushing async to each page we add to the navigation stack. Okay, so now that we have this ready, we need a dependency injection container to sustain the references to this navigation service and utilize it from the view models that we require. We will then proceed to implement a dependency injection container. This is actually going to be a very straightforward implementation. It'll be a class which I will not write since it is considerably extensive. However, we will proceed to create a new folder within the project named tinyioc. Inside this folder, I'm going to create a class called tinyioc. Okay, my class is ready. Next, I will proceed to copy and paste this implementation. I'm merely copying and pasting this class, but if you have some other container you're more familiar with, you can just as well use it as part of this project. In my case, this container is freely available in this GitHub repository. Here comes an implementation. Of this container, there are about 4,300 lines of code. So, it is best to copy and paste this code rather than write it from scratch. Even though creating your own dependency injection container could be an excellent research project. Alright, I'll close this file now. I now have my dependency container. The next step is to create a class named viewModelLocator. This locator will allow me to initialize the container I just created. So, I'll head over to the File Explorer, and within the ViewModels folder, I'll create a new class named viewModelLocator. Okay, this class will be a public static one called viewModelLocator. Inside this class, I'll create a private static instance of tinyOContainer. Before doing that, I'll add a using statement for tinyoc in order to use this tinyoc container type, which I will name _container_. I am going to proceed to create a static constructor for this class. Okay, I have completed my class. Within this constructor that I have here, the idea is to initialize first and foremost this container. So _container equals a new tinyioc container, and I am also going to start registering the view models. Firstly, I register the page 1 view model, and I am also going to proceed in registering my second view model. This is so that this dependency container can handle object creation, object retrieval in the case that they already exist, and other tasks of this type. Okay, I have therefore registered my view models. The next step I am going to take is to register my navigation service. So, I specify navigation service as the first parameter. I import the necessary namespace and indicate that when I use this interface, I want to actually resolve the navigation service class or an instance of navigation service. I have therefore registered the classes needed in my project. The other task I'm going to perform in this class is to create a static method that returns a type T called resolve. I am passing a generic type T where T is a class. Okay, and what this method will actually do is carry out the return of the resolved instance through _container.resolve of the generic T. That is, I will indicate that I want to resolve a specific type, and the container will return the instance that it's trying to resolve. With this, I have completed my class called ViewModelLocator. Okay, now to gain access to the navigation part from each view model, we must define a base view model and resolve our navigation service there. What do I mean by this? Well, basically what I am going to do is go to my view models folder and create a new class called ViewModelBase. This class could indeed have properties that can serve you throughout your different view models. In our case, however, we will use this base class to carry out the definition of an in-navigation service element. We are going to import the missing namespaces. This instance is going to be called Navigation Service. The idea behind this is that I will be able to invoke this navigation service from my view models without having to create new instances or navigate to the service references. I'm going to create a constructor. In this constructor, I will indicate navigation. Service, that is, the navigation service instance, will be equal to, as I have my view model locator ready, which allows me to manage or administer the instances in my project, I will indicate it through a resolve and navigation service. So this will allow me to resolve a type and navigation service, which will actually return a navigation service type instance. With this, I will have a navigation service that I can use from my different view models. An important step here is that I need to invoke as part of my class called navigation service. If you notice, I have a throb new not implemented exception here from the navigate_toAsync method. I will then invoke an internal navigate_toAsync passing a type of the view model. I'll pass null as part of invoking this method, as I don't want to forward any parameter as part of this method. This isn't an await, it's a return, because I want to return whatever this method gives back. With this, my navigation service class is also all set. Okay, what I'm about to do next is to test what I've created up to this point. I'm going to move to my page 1 view model file. Where I have this command's implementation, I'm going to indicate first of all that I want this view model to inherit from ViewModelBase. This will provide me the capability to use my navigation service. So now, from my command, the button command, I'll test this through a wait to see if it works satisfactorily. Navigation service.navigate_toAsync, and as a generic, it's asking us for an element type viewModel. So I input page2 viewModel and notice that this line no longer flags any errors. Okay, with this setup at the moment, I'll place a breakpoint on this line and let's test what we've achieved so far. Okay, here we have a problem as we had left this line from a test we conducted earlier. Let's remove this line and start the project once more. Okay, in theory this should work satisfactorily, but there can always be problems. We have our main page, click on the Go to Page 2 button and let's see what happens. We reach this line of command, that's working well. We go to the navigate_toAsync method. We see we reach the internal navigate_toAsync method. Let's see that here we are going to create an instance. Well, first we get the type, specific to the view file. Secondly, if everything went well here, if you notice, we will be able to create an instance of the page2 view type. We can verify this because we are reaching the page2 view constructor. Okay, so this is working satisfactorily. We return a page element. We might possibly get an element of the navigation page type. We see that as our navigation page is not empty, we're going to do a push async. Okay. At this point, as you can see, we are successfully reaching page 2. We continue debugging, and this allows us to navigate satisfactorily from page 1 to page 2. Notice that everything has happened automatically. We didn't have to create new instances of the page, nor a new instance of the view model. Everything is working transparently without us having to manage the instances in our project. So this is how we execute, or it's the principle to execute navigation system implementation in Xamarin.Forms with pure C# code. So I'm going to leave this code, all of it, for you in a GitHub repository for reference. Well, if you liked this video, if it has been helpful, I invite you once again to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, share it with your colleagues, and click the bell to subscribe to notifications for when I upload a new video on Xamarin.Forms topics. See you in the next video.